Hey guys, it's me, Gavin, and we're finally on the last pre-episode of the Backlog Bunker. After this episode, I'm going to take a break next week, and then the week after that, I'll be doing this, like, for real, with the actual games that I played in the span of a week, which was the original concept for this series. I just wanted to talk about a lot of the games I played previously, since chances are I wouldn't get to talk about them, in the future. And this episode's theme is no theme. This entire episode is going to be made up of things I either forgot to mention in other episodes, or wanted to mention but couldn't find a place to put them in other episodes, without making them way longer than they already are. And the first topic comes from the last episode, which is the thing that I forgot, which is, getting into fighting games was made easier for fighters specifically, and Strive, because fighters and Strive are both present on dustloop.com, which is basically a website for Arxis games, where they have a bunch of, like, it's basically a wiki for, like, that game, and not just, oh, here's a story, here's what these characters are about. No, it's like a wiki for how to play the game, and it made getting into both Fighters and Strive way easier, and way more, like, accessible, because before it was 1984 in Dustloop, a lot of the, like, moves had funny descriptions on them next to, like, the actual descriptions of the moves, and that would, it was a funny way of being like, oh yeah, that move does do that, or this move is kind of fucked up, and it just made wanting to read everything on the site that much more engaging, because I would want to read both the funny bits and the useful bits. And so, again, for both Fighters and Strive, because they both have pretty extensive sections on Dustloop, I would want to read all of them, and it definitely helps me get better at the game, because for as much as, like, video tutorials are nice because you can, like, watch them do the things that they're talking about, it is also nice to be able to read a description of how a thing works and then implement that yourself. Because, it's kind of like how schoolwork works, where you learn about the thing, and then you try the thing at an entry level, and then you do even harder versions of that thing. In this case, it would be, you learn about it from Dustloop, or I learned about it from Dustloop. The entry level would be me doing it in training mode or whatever, or against CPUs, if I could, and then the harder version would be going to online and doing it. And for the most part, it worked. I feel like I kind of plateaued in how good I was at Fighters at a certain point, but that was also when I played the game less and less, so these things just happen. Again, Dustloop itself was the useful tool. What I did with it was entirely up to me, but Dustloop was really useful for getting into Fighters, and Strive slightly less so, because I didn't end up, because like I said before in the last episode, it's not going to play Strive competitively or anything like that, but it still helped. And I say all this to say that the reason getting into other fighting games is way harder than, the reason Fighters is my most played fighting game at, like, 5 times anything before it, and Strive is in second place, is because those are the two games that had the best wikis. BlazBlue is also on Dustloop, but it's not quite as fleshed out, which gets me to the negative parts of it, which is even other games on Dustloop or other sites like Dustloop, like a Super Combo, they're wikis, and they're edited by whoever the fuck wants to edit them. So a lot of the information there is only what people have decided to put on there and then haven't debunked. So if no one decides to put information up there, or if someone does put information up there but it gets deleted because it wasn't accurate, then a lot of the things that you see on Super Combo will be blank pages, or not on Super Combo, also on Dustloop, but a lot of things you'll see will be blank pages because no one's written anything about it, and so you can only get half of the information as you really can, and then looking for any information about whatever else you want to learn about the game is, you better hope someone made a video about it, or made an extensive tweet about whatever the hell you're looking for. Matchup data is where I see it the worst, even for games that, like I said, have pretty extensive sections on Dustloop, like Strive. The matchup data is wildly incomplete, and sometimes just outdated. Like, half the characters don't have half of the other characters in terms of matchups, and I understand that that's kind of unfeasible for any, like, single person to do on their own, because you'd have to come up with every character, and then every character in relation to every other character, including themselves, but it is unfortunate that no one's done it, because there are some characters that might be the most annoying characters in the game, and I have no idea what to do about them. I'm pretty sure Leo's matchup against Testament just isn't really fleshed out at all on Dustloop, because I have no idea what to do against that character. That's one of the most annoying characters in the game for me. And then, like I said, Dustloop for Fighters and Strive was one of the better ones, so it only gets worse as we go down the list in terms of the games that I play, because Street Fighter 6 is wildly inconsistent. Kim's matchup data is, like, it's so extensive for like every character. You go to a character section and it's like, okay, here's what you can do at every single like section of them being at low health, which is wild to me. Nice because I played Kim, but otherwise, for Lily, a character that I also play but that I struggle way more with because I feel like Lily isn't quite as good a character as Kim. You go to her matchup data and it's fucking barren. This is like actual crumbs. You go to the Kim versus Kim matchup and they'll describe fucking everything. You go to the Lily versus Lily matchup and I think the description was like just win, bro. I don't think it was actually that dismissive, but it was essentially that dismissive because I remember it was one line of text and it might as well have just said just win, bro. So for some characters, they don't get quite nearly the same amount of work as others, which is what makes getting into these things hard. And again, that's for one of the games that actually has an entry, like on Super Combo or Dust Loop. Fuck, like Tekken, which is the game that I talked about last time being the hardest to get into because I don't know how to fucking play it. Fuck a Tekken Dust Loop. Imagine how useful it would be to just not have to do any of this stupid video tutorial bullshit that people have to do for Tekken. Because genuinely, that's how you get into Tekken nowadays. Well, maybe less so with 8, because 8 actually has a tutorial. But with 7, that game was out for like 9 years before we got Tekken 8. And during that entire time, people got into Tekken 7 by looking up on YouTube how to play Tekken 7, and then hoping and praying to God that the video tutorial was in any way useful, because those are wildly inconsistent. At least with a wiki, you can read it and then interpret the information however you need to interpret it for your gameplay. But in a video tutorial, someone will be like, okay, so when you're doing a... I remember there was one video tutorial for Tekken 7 where it was like, when you release a crouching input and then like you're going to your standing state, that's called like while rising in the game, but people thought that was confusing and stupid, so we call it while standing. But while standing is more confusing to me. I know what while rising means, it's while you're rising from a crouch. But while standing just makes me think, oh, you're already standing and you haven't changed that. So, and I think the explanation was that like there was a different acronym for WR in Tekken 7 like notation, so calling it while rising was gonna be confusing for people. But if anything, that just means change that other notation, because while standing is not at all clear to me compared to while rising. And so you hear shit like that in a video, and it's like some people will just make their interpretations harder for you to understand. So a video tutorial will only help you insofar as how much you can understand that person. I say all this to say that a Tekken Dust Loop would be really, really helpful. Also really hard, probably, because there's like a billion moves in that game, and a billion characters. So I kind of understand why there isn't a Tekken Dust Loop, and even if there was, it would be years off from it even being kind of sort of completed. But I wish that the FGC would come together more on these kinds of things to make like an actual wiki for any of these games. Even for games that aren't traditional fighters, like Smash Bros. We have Smash frame data, but that's really only useful for people who already play Smash and know what the hell frame data is. If you're trying to get into Smash and you want to look up a wiki of how to play the game, you're either going to be looking at video tutorials, because the game itself ain't going to teach you shit, especially not in terms of the competitive side of the game, and then the same video tutorial problem comes up from Tekken. Maybe less so with Smash, because things are more intuitive there, but still. So, get on it, Sonic Fox. I know you're good at, like, every fucking fighting game you play, so, do some more. Then, next, in terms of things that I forgot to talk about, there's Metal Gear Rising, because when I was making the whole section before about the MGS games I played in the first episode, or either part 1 or part 2, I forget, but when I was talking about the MGS games that I played, I really only played 1 through 5, because as I mentioned in my Metal Gear Solid video, I skipped Twin Snakes because, come on, I skipped Metal Gears 1 and 2 because they're really old and I don't think they're going to be all that fun. I'll play them eventually, but just, I was not concerned about them for getting through the series as I intended it at first. And then I didn't play Portable Ops because it's Metal Gear Solid Light and bad, and then I didn't play Peace Walker because it's Metal Gear Solid Light and slightly less bad. And so I skipped a lot of the ancillary Metal Gear Solid content that wasn't the mainline games, except for Rising. I did play Rising, but I didn't play Rising until after I'd beaten 5, because while playing the Metal Gear Solid games, much like this video, I had forgotten to get to Rising before I got to anything else. Which I guess I probably would have always intended to play Rising after 5, because I wanted to play through all the actual Metal Gear Solid games first, and then play the action game, but even once I had beaten 5, I had forgotten about Rising until like months later, until a friend was like, oh, so you're gonna play, have you played Rising yet, or are you gonna play Rising for your Metal Gear Solid go through? And I was like, oh yeah, forgot about that. I don't even think I'd owned it on Steam yet. I remembered to buy it because the friend reminded me. And once I got to Rising itself, I don't really have a lot of complaints. The only complaint I really do have is that it feels like there are too many moves for what the game actually requires of you. because most of what I did in Rising was parries and then like basic slashes into heavy slashes. I didn't really worry all that much about the actual move list ever. I think the one move that I really got any use out of was like a back forward input that was like a thunder strike or something, because it would really occasionally stun enemies, and it did like a decent bit of damage. But aside from that, I was not focused on like, oh, a YYXY or whatever else for the combo or for the like the move list, because why would I bother remembering all of that when I can just press the buttons and get the same result, or press the same buttons that I already know how to press and get the results that I know are consistent. So I wish the move list was a little bit more extensive, as well as the enemy variety. Not to say that there wasn't enemy variety, but rather that the enemy variety that was actually present wasn't very interesting. Like, off the top of my head, I can remember basic enemies with different kind of gun, and then like the big guys that have super armor, and the various types of geckos slash Metal Gears. And for most of them, the answer really was just hit them until they flash red so you can parry them, and then hit them some more until you can Zaibatsu, or not Zandatsu, not the Mishima thing, but until you could Zandatsu. And then for most enemies, you didn't even have to do that. For like the basic enemies, you could actually just wail on them until they were in Zandatsu state, and then do all that. So for most of the enemies, it just didn't really feel like I was engaging with the game all that much. I definitely have my preferences. Like, I didn't think the super armor guys were all that fun, but I wish there were more enemies and more to do with enemies, because for the most part, it really did just come down to do damage until you Zandatsu them, or parry them until you Zandatsu them. And if there was more to do, it would be more engaging, even with the parry system. Because with the parry, it very much feels like it was made for one-on-one or very limited combat, but in group stages, it's not quite as useful. But it does do AoE damage. If it hits multiple people with the initial slash, then a parry will be able to hit other enemies. And so I feel like if they had gone into more of that, either more enemies or more interesting enemies, they could have done more with using parries from one enemy to use on another enemy. Like imagine if you had like a flick where you could parry one enemy, and then if you flick the stick in a different direction fast enough, the actual swing itself would go in a different direction, and then you use the parry and attack from one enemy to keep attacking the enemy you were already on, or something like that. You know, it would be nice. Which I get that would be hard, considering that the parry's already directional, and the game's lock-on isn't quite the way like a DMZ lock-on works. So it would be hard. And like I said, I like the game for what it is. I just wish there was way more, because there's definitely a lot of things that I want to do in that game that I think would be really fun, but not really with the enemies as they are presented to be currently. The bosses are nice, except for when they do the things that I don't like, which I know isn't very like descriptive, but it feels like every boss has one section where I'm just like, ugh, okay, can we get it over with, please? Like Sundowner. There's the rest of the fight is pretty cool. I didn't know how to beat him at first, but now that I actually know how to do it, the fight is even better than I thought it was previously. And then, but then he gets to the part where you have to get on the fucking bird and fly up the building, which A, lasts way too long, and B, is just like really fucking hard, because they as soon as a piece of debris appears on your screen, if you're not already on the other side of the screen, you're probably gonna get hit by it, which is super annoying. And it ruins the pace of the fight, especially since when you get on the bird section, it stops Red Sun from playing, which the music, great music, mostly for the boss fights. The actual in-stage music I don't think I remember most of, but for the boss fights, yeah, great music. And Red Sun, fantastic song, but it gets interrupted by that stupid fucking bird section, and I'm not a fan. In terms of my favorite boss, it would probably either be the guy who goes through your sword slashes, whose name I don't remember, but whose song I definitely remember because it's my favorite in the game, Stains of Time. Stains of Time is my favorite song in all of Metal Gear Rising, and that boss fight is probably elevated by that song. I might even not like it as much as I think I do, but it's definitely an awesome fight and an awesome song. So, either that guy or Sam, for obvious reasons, but Sam is very much the actual like sword duel of the game, whereas the other guy that I'm talking about is more of the, you know, keep up the pace type of boss fight, high energy type of stuff that I'm looking for from Metal Gear Rising. So that aspect of both of those fights I like, and if I had to choose one, it'd probably be Sam, because Sam is the one I remember having less of a hard time with. But again, Stains of Time, fantastic song, and I know that not It Has to Be This Way. What's Sam's song again? Memories broken, the truth was unspoken. Have you forgotten my name? I can't, no. Anytime I forget a Metal Gear Rising song, I just go through the lyrics, and because the lyrics is typically the name of the song is typically somewhere in the lyrics. Stains of Time, like literally while I was thinking about it in my head, going over like what's the boss fight name again? I was like, wash away the sorrows on the stains of time. There we go. But yeah, I know Sam's song is iconic, but it's not one of my favorites from Rising. I probably like Mistral's song more than I do Sam's, honestly. I sing the lyrics to remember it right now, but that's besides the point, because I like her song as well. But A Stranger I Remain, there we go, because it goes in the song. A Stranger I Remain. Great music, great music. Love a lot of the aspects of that game, minus the story, because as I mentioned with a few of the Metal Gear games, the story is just not quite there for most of them, Rising included, and it's not entirely Rising's fault, because Rising is very much the same as Metal Gear Solid 4 in that it tries to retcon the things that come before, and trying to retcon Metal Gear Solid 4 is all thumbs up in my book. However, trying to retcon a retcon does not make for a better retcon, it just makes you have two retcons. You know, an eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind, especially if that applies to Hideo Kojima. Not that I think he even wrote Rising. He might have, because, you know, Metal Gear, but yeah, I don't think he wrote that game because a lot of the time it doesn't feel like Kojima writing. It feels like Platinum writing with the Kojima cone to paint on it, but I digress. It doesn't really matter who wrote it, because the point is the story sucks. Because 4 tried to retcon 2 in saying, you know that happy, or not happy, but like the sort of optimistic ending from 2 and how Jack is like becoming a normal person. Fuck all that, actually he became a cyborg ninja and his life sucks. And then 4 ends with, but we're just kidding though. and then it's like, okay, fine. 2 had a optimistic ending that 4 ruined, but then 4 also has an optimistic ending that I feel like it stole, but you know, whatever. 4 also has an optimistic ending. Things are looking up for our boy Jack. And then we get to Metal Gear Rising. Rose is question mark. His son is question mark. Everyone else in the Metal Gear universe that we already know of, question mark. Who knows what anyone else is doing aside from Raiden and his merry band of fucks now. And so again, we ruined the ending from the previous game just to go, things are different now, because we keep fucking time skipping around in this goddamn universe, and every time we do, it's to some shit that doesn't make some shit that makes less sense than it did before. And that's just like the broad story, not even to get into how the game ends, which is, unlike 2 and 4, it doesn't retcon the previous games and then go for its own optimistic ending. It retcons the previous games and then goes, and then Metal Gear Solid Rising continued to happen. So, I'm not a fan of Rising's story. And even the silly parts of the game, which is the thing that everyone fucking knows Rising for, are actually very few and far between. Like, aside from the Senator scenes, which are exactly as funny as everyone has made them out to be, everything before that is pretty standard action game stuff. Raiden goes to a place and he's like, I'm gonna fight ya, and then he fights him, and then the game continues. So I can't really say that even the funny meme parts of the game that everyone jokes about are even really all that great, because they happen in such low quantity compared to everything else in the game. The cutscenes for everything that I didn't care about were way longer than the ones for the ones I did care about. Like, I don't want to walk while Sundowner talks to me about how he takes child brains and diddles them or something. I kind of tuned out because I didn't care. Like, I know what they were doing with the kitty brains, but going from what was happening with the Patriots in Metal Gear Solid 4 to now we take brains and put them in robots, I just don't care. It's not in any way appealing to me when it comes to Metal Gear Solid's worlds, so Rising kind of lost me on that aspect. The only cutscene I can say that wasn't funny that I liked was at the very beginning of the game.
Your team deserves credit as well, Mr. Lightning Bolt.
Please, call me Gavin. And then next is Persona 4, and I don't really have much to say about Persona 4, aside from how I feel about it in relation to Persona 5, and I've probably mentioned it before at some point, but the whole reason that I replayed Persona 5 the second time, it was because after I'd played Persona 5, and I didn't like it, like, time had passed, and then eventually I'd played Persona 4, which was, you know, in this span of time that these videos are even about. And so, eventually I played Persona 4, and I thought I was gonna like it more because I had watched the anime before that, and I liked the story a lot. And, to be fair, I was kind of right about that. I do like Persona 4's story way more than I do Persona 5's. Same goes for the main cast. I fucking love the investigation team, whereas I do not like the Phantom Thieves, minus Ryuji, because Ryuji's awesome, and Yusuke has his highlights, and Futaba's actually pretty alright too, but the rest of them, they can suck an egg. but the investigation team, I love them. Minus Rise. Rise kind of sucks. She's really boring, and she's way too horny for the main character. But aside from that, love Persona 4 story, love their main cast. So I was right about that from having watched the anime, but watching the anime it couldn't have told me about the one thing that I didn't like about Persona 4, which was the gameplay, because I did not realize how awful the one more system is without baton passes, because with Persona 4, if you have like Yosuke get a one more and it's on a group of enemies where only one of them is weak to wind, what the fuck is Yosuke gonna do with the rest of his time? Like he'll get some other decent damage in, but if we're just gonna go for more damage, then instead of this stupid ass one more system, just have me do super effective damage that does twice the damage, because the one more just wastes my time when I can't do anything else with it aside from get more damage in. And I understand that I might not want to get that more damage in on the enemy that I just hit, so it gives you more options to do with your super effective damage than just doing double damage. So I guess I'll admit that that's a more interesting way of doing it, where it's like, instead of doing twice the damage, you get twice the turns, so you can either go for twice the damage or get more damage on a different enemy. So I like that aspect of it, but with Persona 4, there are so many enemies that are either resistant to the character you just got a one more with, or just don't take that much damage from physical, that really you are just wasting your time to use it on anyone else but the enemy you just hit, assuming you didn't kill them. If you killed them, then obviously it's nice, but otherwise, you know, or to get an all-out attack. But without baton passes, it just wasn't anywhere near as interesting, so that aspect of the combat sucked. Getting personas is bad in a different way than it is Persona 5, because this is not a praise of Persona 5, but the Persona 4 persona collecting system also sucks dick. It's a fucking card capture minigame. So they both suck for different reasons. I guess 4's is more consistent technically, but that's technically being, if you know what card you want, you can get that card, but if it's a persona you don't want in that moment, if you're looking for a certain persona, you're only going to get that if it happens to show up in the cards you want, because you don't fight the actual personas in the game, kind of. It's a whole thing. And the dungeons are procedurally generated crap. It's just all just a bunch of bullshit that's not fun. Again, this is not a praise of Persona 5, but at least in Persona 5, you can more accurately attack enemies by surprise with the stealth system, with the quote-unquote stealth system. But with Persona 4, if an enemy's not turned around and you don't like run up to them and swing at them immediately, because they will actually just 180 as soon as they detect you, then you're just not gonna ever get priority in battle. Maybe it's just a skill issue, because throughout my entire time playing the game, I remember like maybe half of my battles me having priority, but I thought it was way harder than it should have been, but maybe it's just maybe I just should have done it better. I don't know. Maybe it might have been base Persona 4 things. I didn't play Golden. I played base P4 on a PS2 emulator, or on a real PS2. So that also sort of helped with playing the game. But I say all this to say that on the gameplay front, Persona 4 was just not very fun at all. So I give Persona 4 like a 4 out of 10, whereas Persona 5 is like a 6 out of 10. So, and the only reason I gave it the 6 out of 10 was because after I'd played Persona 4 and I saw how much I didn't like it on the gameplay front, I wanted to replay 5, and I was like, maybe I misjudged it. And the answer was that I did, because I originally gave Persona 5 a 4 out of 10. Or a 5 out of 10. No. I definitely gave it a 4, because I thought it was bad, not just mid. And so, I replayed 5, thinking maybe I had misjudged it this whole time, and that I was right. I had misjudged it. 5 was better than I was giving it credit for. I still don't like it. I still think it's only a 6 out of 10, which is a far cry from what the rest of the world thinks about it, but it was better than I had thought it previously. And so, my fault, Persona 5. I apologize. Then another game that I played was Huniepop's 1 and 2, because for a long time I'd seen Huniepop's 1 and 2 through YouTube videos, as I did most video games growing up. But yeah, for this one it was particularly hard because I didn't have a PC. So even if I had wanted to play these games, I was not getting my hands on them without a computer. And even if I had gotten a computer, I wouldn't have got my hands on those games without my parents knowing, because they were those kind of parents, you know? So when I eventually got to playing the Huniepop games for real, I played the first one first, and initially, what happened was a Kingdom Hearts situation. Because remember, I thought Kingdom Hearts 1 was actually better than Kingdom Hearts 2 when I was initially playing 2, because there were a few things that had changed that I wasn't as much of a fan of. And this happened to Huniepop's 1 and 2 as well. In Huniepop 1, I liked that it was a pretty no-frills kind of game. You get in, you do the puzzles, you do the dating sim aspect, and then you go back to doing puzzles. And that was kind of just it for the whole game. Whereas Huniepop 2 tried to gamify it a lot more. It's actually also a bit of a Doom 16, Doom Eternal kind of situation, where Huniepop 2 made it way more video gamey, where the dating sim aspects were way toned down in terms of just doing the actual puzzle aspects, because the puzzle aspects were getting way more in depth. And like I said, initially I wasn't as much of a fan of 2 as I was of 1, but the more that I had played of both 1 and 2, because I went for 100% on both of them, the more I realized that 1 is actually kind of boring. Like, it's still a good game, don't get me wrong, but it went from 1 was at a 9 and 2 was at an 8 to reversing. 1 was at an 8, 2 was at a 9, because with 1, I realized that the dating sim aspects were dragging down the game a lot. Because 1 takes itself far more seriously as a dating sim, with puzzle. 1 is more of a half and half of dating sim and puzzle game, and it takes itself way more seriously in that regard. Obviously, Q still takes the piss out of everything, but the actual game itself was way more streamlined in that aspect. But with 2, like I said, they video game it way more, and it's way more puzzle game than it is dating sim. Which is like the whole game's about fucking threesomes. You don't even talk to a single girl one-on-one, aside from initially meeting them. So the game is far more concerned with you playing the video game. And since both my taste in games and my actual like methods of analyzing games have both, changed over the time it took me to play Huniepop's 1 and 2 to 100%, I've realized that 2 is the better game for it, because it's a video game. I would rather do the video game parts of the video game than the not video game parts of the video game. And so, 1, I still appreciate it, but it is made slower by just how long everything takes in terms of the actual, like, dating sim aspects, whereas 2 is a video game, and if you like looking at titties, those are also there. It's kind of a win-win, because if you're playing a dating sim for the titties, which is kind of what Huniepop 1 was, then you probably want an easier time getting to the titties, and so Huniepop 2 just makes it a video game, and then you also get titties. It's like the best case scenario. So, good for them, I guess. And I will say that Huniepop's 1 and 2 both gave me the Tetris effect, which, if you don't know, is when you're playing it applies mostly to Tetris, because Tetris is so high score based and also so streamlined, and also like one of the best video games ever created, if not the best. Then what happens is, the more you play it, the more its systems start to ingrain themselves in your mind, to the point where you'll start daydreaming about playing the game, as if you were actually playing the game in front of you. You'll have dreams about playing the game, and things like that. And this applies to a lot of video games. It definitely has for me, whenever I play a lot of a game at once, but it applies mostly to Tetris and like other kinds of puzzle games like that. And Huniepop is a block falling game, which isn't the exact same as Tetris, but it's close enough to give me the Tetris effect, to the point where if I ever saw patterns of red, blue, green, and orange in the real world, I would go, damn, how can I match this to get an actual match? It was tiresome. And luckily, Huniepop 2 is way less focused on the titties aspect of the game until you actually win. And so I didn't get Tetris effect on I didn't get the Tetris effect on that part of the game, because that would have been way more awkward. But point being, Huniepop 2, fantastic game. Because I've been talking about how Huniepop 1 was more disappointing after playing it more and more, but Huniepop 2 just got better and better, because I was initially not as much of a fan of like the stamina system, because I thought it was annoying to have to keep switching back and forth. But playing the game more and more, and going for higher and higher scores on the infinite date mode or on the alpha mode, it's gotten me way more invested in like actually trying to figure out how this game works and trying to come up with like the most efficient strategies for everything. And it was really fun. I don't really have any complaints about Huniepop 2 now that I've played it more and more to both 100% and beyond, because I still play every now and then. I'll just throw open Huniepop 2 so I can do another high score mode, or infinite date. I keep forgetting the name of it. A non-stop date, that's actually what it's called. To do another non-stop date to see if I can get a higher score, or to get back into alpha mode to see if I can get just one more date that I can get a higher score, or get completed on, as opposed to almost getting there. There are a lot of times where I'll admit I get fucked, but that's just kind of how block falling games are, and that's why it's a 9 as opposed to a 10, because while everything about the game itself is perfect, and I have no complaints, that's what the 9 comes from. That loss of a point is from the fact that it's still a block falling game, and you can very occasionally get fucked over through no fault of your own, because how were you supposed to know that 3 broken hearts were going to fall in a row on the time that you got the character exhausted? Because the way the game works is, if you exhaust a character, it goes straight to the next character. And so if you were ever so unlucky as to exhaust a character and then it pans over to the next character on the other side, and then you get fucked over by a broken heart falling directly into place from the match you just made. Then you just lose the game right there. There's no other options. So that part is what drags it down from a 10 to a 9, and it's unfortunate because otherwise I like the game a lot. Then there's Fall Guys, and I don't know if I can technically count Fall Guys as one of the games that was on my backlog before I played it, because I think Fall Guys came out while I was getting through my backlog, so I might have played it just as it was, trying to get into Fall Guys. So it might not technically belong here, but I don't care, because I want to talk about Fall Guys, specifically how much I don't like it, because Fall Guys is a very interesting concept, and I like it for the concept, but not so much the actual video game. Because the way Fall Guys is described by many people, including myself, is that it's like a battle royale for Mario Party games, for Mario Party minigames, and that, again, is an interesting concept, but you have to realize that the reason Mario Party minigames are so great is because they work in conjunction with the rest of the video game. Whenever you win at a minigame, that helps you on the board section. And I think I talked about this when I talked about Mario Party in one of the previous episodes, but again, with Mario Party, the board is equally as important as the minigames. People remember Mario Party for the minigames, but again, the board is what keeps everything together. Without the board, the minigames are kind of just there. And the only way the minigames can support themselves without the board parts of the game is if the minigames themselves are really, really fun. Because fun for the sake of fun is fine. That's how most battle royales work. Whenever you're done with the match in the battle royale, you get into the next one, and they're all isolated from each other. And you do it because you find the matches themselves fun. I don't, because I hate battle royales, but let's pretend that I did. That's how battle royales work in general. You do it because they're fun. But for Mario Party minigames, for a lot of them, they aren't like the most fun thing in the world. They are fun because of how they play in conjunction with the rest of the game. And so, when you get to Fall Guys and you realize that's just the Mario Party minigames with nothing to connect to them, the minigames themselves have to be top tier amazing to be able to carry the game by itself, so you can play it just for the sake of having fun. And the problem is that Fall Guys' minigames are not that. There are fine minigames. There are even some fun minigames. There are some good ones in there. But the majority of Fall Guys minigames are either RNG based, bad, or don't even approach good. Or sorry, no. Or I should say, are supposed to be good, but are ruined by a certain aspect. Namely, like 3v3 or 1v1v1 games. Any team game where it's individual teams that isn't just half and half. Because the way it was explained to me by famous YouTuber Salak Hawk is that three for all minigames are not at all good, because the way things will work is that if one team's in last place, is within the other two teams' best interest to keep that team down, because the way it works for those games is that two teams win and one team loses. So in a 3-for-all, is as long as you're not in last place, you're winning. And so if you see someone that is in last place, you don't need to worry about whoever's in the first place or second place. You just have to keep last place down, and you win. You don't have to worry about having like I think there was one that was about like getting eggs in your basket or whatever. You don't need to keep eggs in your basket to make sure you're in first place. No, just keep taking eggs out of whoever's in last place, because then they can never win. You don't even need to make sure the eggs go to your basket. Just make sure that they're not in that basket. And so any 3-for-all game was mostly designed around keeping last place down, and that was just unfortunate. There were some games that were better about it. Like during the snow season, there was one where it's like every team starts on their own lane where they have to roll the snowball, and then at the end you get more time to roll the snowball. And so for most of the game, the three teams were actually like divided and they couldn't interact with each other, and so that was good. But then at the end of the minigame, the teams like fall into the same bowl where you can interact with each other, and as soon as you got there and you notice whoever's in last place, every fucking person would just flock to whoever had the smallest ball and just stop them from rolling. So the same aspect applied there too, and it just didn't really work out all that well. So that's the case where a game could have been good, but it was kept down by that. And then there's things like, you know, the RNG mini games, like the door breaking one or anything like that. If you want to know how long it's been since I played Fall Guys, I'm talking about seasons that were like at this point 2-3 years ago. So if you want to get some perspective on that. And then even the best mini games, like any of the final fall, well, I shouldn't say any of them, because some of the final mini games are kind of ass. But Hexagon's one of the best ones. But like, yeah, even for ones like Hexagon, or some of the better like mid-tier races or mid-tier games like the races, those are good games. They're fun. but they aren't that fun to be able to carry the entire game by themselves, especially considering how infrequently you play them, to the point where I just kind of started wondering, why am I even playing Fall Guys, because I don't like most of the games, and then even if I happen to win the entire Fall Guys thing, okay, I get some crowns I can spend on costumes, but like, I already have the costumes I want. Like, I don't have Sonic the Hedgehog because I stopped playing the game by that point, but had I gotten Sonic the Hedgehog as a costume, I would have gotten that, and I would have stopped wanting costumes, because that's like the best one. It's the only one I wanted. So, why would I even bother playing the game if that's the only thing that winning gets me? If the games aren't fun, and then winning isn't fun, so why would I play the game? You know? And so, for people who like Fall Guys, I understand that it is just fun for the sake of fun, but to that I would say, I don't understand why they like Fall Guys, because so many of the minigames just fucking suck. And the last thing that I want to talk about, or the last game I want to talk about, are the No More Heroes games, because that's another series that I played during my time, you know, playing all these games, and I had forgotten to include it within the first 2 episodes at this point, but looking back, I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I'm actually not going to get that in depth with No More Heroes, because I do plan on making a video about those games, so look out for that content in 3 years, but I do plan on making a video about No More Heroes, so get more of my thoughts then. But for now, I'm just going to keep it short and sweet for each of the games. So for No More Heroes 1, I didn't like it. I thought the game kinda sucked, because I think the open world is boring and slow, and I wish it was in the game, because, like, again, it's boring and slow. It just wasted my time for the parts of the game that I actually wanted to play, which is the action parts. But even the action parts weren't that great. It was mostly just hack and slash, which is fine, you know? A hack and slash can just be a hack and slash. But it was a hack and slash that I didn't feel like I had to do much for, so it really was just me spamming the attack button for the entire game. And then I got to the end. Some of the bosses are worse than others. I think not Kimmy, that's No More Heroes 2. Bad Girl. I think Bad Girl kinda sucks because she's really annoying whenever she goes into her batting state. You can't really do anything about that. And Jean is pretty hard and annoying, but not that bad in the grand scheme of things. So most of the boss fights were either fine or I didn't like them. So that part was also disappointing. The story is the story. I don't think that I need to get into that now. For people who don't know about No More Heroes' story, I'm not gonna be able to do anything for you now. And for people who do know, you'll get my thoughts on that when I make the video. So we'll get to that. And then the only part that I really liked about No More Heroes 1 was the final boss, because well, I guess you could call it the secret final boss, because if you don't have the Tsubaki Mark III, then you're not going to be able to fight him. But Henry was like one of my favorite characters in No More Heroes by the end of the first game, because because this boss fight is awesome. His boss fight is the best fight in the game, because it's hard, but it's also really fair. And if you're really good at the game, you can just kick his ass, which I did, because when No More Heroes is really flexing its muscles in terms of its mechanics, it's a fantastic game. And I love the Henry boss fight. It's awesome. And the last cutscene following the Henry fight is also awesome. It almost redeemed No More Heroes for me. It didn't, because the rest of the game still sucked. But, well, not sucked, but wasn't that good. So it was still disappointing in the grand scheme of things, but I felt good at the end of the game because Henry kind of brought it back. He saved the game both from a gameplay and story perspective. So thanks, Henry. I can't complain. And then I ended up giving No More Heroes 1 a 5 out of 10, because for all the good parts that would bring it up to like a 7-ish, it gets brought down by the bad parts that bring it down to a 5. So this isn't a 5 to say No More Heroes is an average game. This is a 5 to say it's a good game brought down by bad things. Also controls. The controls were not great. The dodge did not work very consistently. I remember having a hard time with Shinobu because dodging her was fucking impossible sometimes. I don't know if it's how the game works, how the dodge works. I don't know. I'll get into it more and make the video because I'll have replayed the games by then. But for now, it's just the controls were also not great. I played on Switch, by the way, not on the Wii. So there's that. Then No More Heroes 2, which as far as I'm concerned, is almost the best No More Heroes game because it doesn't have quite the same problems as 3 does. But 3 is more of like an actual action game than 2 is, so I ended up liking 3 more and I consider it a better game, but 2 definitely got close, because I would consider No More Heroes 2 a 6 out of 10 that's very close to a 7, because it got rid of all the open world bullshit from the first game that I didn't like, so it was already... I was ready to give No More Heroes 2 an 8, just from the fact that it didn't have an open world, which is one of the crazy things to me. And again, I'll mention this in the video, so I'm not going to get too deep into it now. But people consider 2 to be worse than 1 because the story is worse. Did you play No More Heroes? And because the open world isn't there, so it has a soul. First of all, fuck you. Second of all, like you can't. Not only can you not measure a soul, but even then, the open world was stupid and shitty anyway, so it's the game's better for not having it. But again, I'll get into it more at some other point, so for now, I'll just leave it at that. I think people are wrong about No More Heroes 1 and 2, because 2 is very obviously the better game. Because even in terms of the actual, like, straight-up gameplay, 2 was just better. Because, for one, there's the Ecstasy mode, which is just an actual go mode that you can activate without having to worry about RNG. And so, it was just a way more fun version of playing No More Heroes 1 at a lot of points. Especially once you get the Rose Nasty, because the Rose Nasty is the most fun weapon in the game. And even then, the other weapons are also really good. Because No More Heroes 1, there wasn't really much reason to use the lower versions of Tsubaki / Bloodberry, because with the other versions, it was just like more damage. There's no reason to use Tsubaki, or there's no reason to use Bloodberry over Tsubaki 1, and there's no reason to use Tsubaki 1 over Tsubaki 2. Tsubaki 2 versus Tsubaki 3 is where the actual competition comes in, because 2 has it, because there was a difference in damage, but whereas Tsubaki 3 does less damage but more hits, 2 does more damage but less hits. And I ended up, but even then, Tsubaki 3 is still just a better weapon, because the DPS is still about the same, and its execution drive is way bigger. It doesn't look quite that big, because the hitbox is strange, or because the visual hitbox is strange. It's not what we would think it would be. But once you actually start using it, you'll fucking, like, clear entire rooms just from getting one execution on one enemy, because it just fucking sweeps the entire area around you or in front of you. So, Tsubaki Mark III is also just better than 2. But then you get into No More Heroes 2, and aside from Bloodberry, because, you know, it's Bloodberry, Tsubaki, Rose Nasty, and Peony all have, like, their own niche uses. Peony is a big damage, but way slower, to the point where I actually used Rose Nasty on the first 2 phases of the final boss, and then I used Peony on the 3rd phase, because what happened with the 3rd phase of Jasper Bat is that he gets way more aggressive, and it's actually a pretty big difficulty spike. But if you use Peony, you don't have to worry about, like, getting multiple hits in, because the problem that I was having was that with Rose Nasty, it's like a Tsubaki where it gets a lot of hits in for not that much damage, but because he's so aggressive and he has super armor in the 3rd phase, I would get, like, 2-3 hits in, and then I would already have to, like, get out the way so I would be able to do less damage, or so I wouldn't take damage, I should say. But with Peony, since it does all of its damage in, like, 1 or 2 hits, I could actually just hit Jasper Bat with 1 or 2 hits from Peony and get way more damage than I was before. And that's how I beat the final boss. So the utility between the different weapons is actually still up there between Rose Nasty and Peony in No More Heroes 2. And then Peony is also slower than Tsubaki or Rose Nasty. So Tsubaki and Rose Nasty are the 2 weapons that lose for most of the game. And even then, the 2 of them have their own uses. You mostly replace Tsubaki with Rose Nasty, because Rose Nasty is kind of just a better Tsubaki, but because of its different combos from having 2 swords, I can't understand why you would want to use Tsubaki over Rose Nasty. Here I am saying that I'm not going to get too deep into it, and here I am getting too deep into it. But the point being, I like No More Heroes 2 a lot. The reason that's still pretty low, it's only 1 point above No More Heroes 1, with maybe a little bit of wiggle room to go to a 7, is because the bosses in 2 kinda suck. And that's really just it. The bosses in 2 kinda suck. Especially when you play as Shinobu or Henry, because Shinobu and Henry are not quite as fun to play as Travis. So it's unfortunate, but it really is just the bosses kinda suck. And it's still just a hack and slash game. So on its best day, it's still only like an 8, and then it gets brought down to a 7 because of the bosses, and then it gets brought down to a 6, almost 7, because of, again, the controls. Specifically the camera, because it feels like No More Heroes 2's camera is trying to be more cinematic than 1's, so it'll get lower to the ground for certain fights, mostly bosses, and it's just not as well spaced as No More Heroes 1's camera is. So that part was kind of unfortunate, and again, the controls are just not perfect. The dodge works better in 2 than in 1, as I have observed, but again, it felt very consistent. I'll get more into it when I replay the games. And also, it's a good thing it took out the part-time job. Well, I mean, the part-time job is still there, but they're far less annoying. So again, stupid shit from 1 that was taken out. I really, yeah, in my heart of hearts, I feel like 2 is a 7 if 1 is going to be a 5, because it feels wrong to have 1, a game that I, for the most part, really don't like, right next to 2 at a 6. So I feel like 2 should be a 7, but there was I forget exactly what it was, but there was some feeling I had right after I'd beaten it, where I couldn't decide between 6 and a 7, and I ended up choosing 6. Maybe upon replaying, I'll end up going with 7 instead, and I hope I do, because I want to be able to say that No More Heroes 2 is as good as I like it, but unfortunately it just didn't quite get up there. But it would make sense in the grand scheme of things if 1 was a 5, 2 was a 6, and because 3 is definitely a 7. it would be nice for them to progressively increase like that, because it would mean the series got better, but not that much better, because 3 is also not a good video game. And it's hard to not get into it with 3, because there are just so many disparate wrong things with 3, but to keep it short, I'll probably be able to not even have to re-record footage for 3 to make this Backlog Bunker, because for most of the games where I use my own footage, I just go back into the game and play it some more to be able to use that as background footage. But for 3, I have so many saved clips of some old bullshit happening to me in 3 that I could probably take up this entire 3 section with just the clips of the things that happened to me that were bullshit. Hitboxes are stupid, the dodge doesn't make any sense because it's not really a dodge, you do anything else. The game itself controls kind of strangely because its buffer system is really strict. If you press the attack button, you're gonna have to commit to that like a full second ahead of time. So congrats on that. The bosses kinda suck. The story is even worse than the last 2 games because unlike 1, it's not funny, and unlike 2, it's not short enough to be able to ignore, because 3 wastes way more of your time with a bunch of stupid bullshit that I just don't care about, especially when it comes to Henry. My god, how they ruined Henry. Why is he not Irish anymore? That was like the whole joke, is that he's randomly Irish. That's the funny part about Henry. That's what makes him awesome, because they never mentioned it. He's just Irish. He's just that guy. But then in 3, he's different and stupid and weird. And oh my god, I just realized I didn't even talk about Travis Strikes Again. I suppose to make a long story short for Travis Strikes Again, I didn't play it because the game was boring and bad, and I didn't like it. No, I shouldn't say it was bad, because I didn't play it, so I can't really definitively say if it was bad. But from what I played of it, it's a top-down hack and slash that's even less fun than NMH1's hack and slashing, so can't say I was really a fan. I heard the gameplay also changes from every single world, and so I also wasn't a fan of that either. And I wasn't having fun, so I decided to just skip out on Travis Strikes Again and get into the story, which was also a mistake, because Travis Strikes Again does not have a story, it has a musing, because as many people have pointed out, Travis Strikes Again's story is way more of Suda talking about video games than it is a story. Even if you frame it from the perspective of Travis talking about his life as an assassin or what the fuck ever, it's still just some old bullshit. And I wasn't really interested in that either. I'm sure Suda has some really interesting thoughts about what it's like to be a person who creates video games, but I don't care, because I don't like his video games. So, you know, I can't really say much about anything in Travis Strikes Again's story, because, again, the actual story of the game is nonsensical. It's just a vehicle for the meta. But back to No More Heroes 3, that applies is sort of the same way to 3's story, because, like I mentioned with Henry, he's different and weird and stupid now, but apparently that's, like, supposed to be the theme or something in No More Heroes 3, because the problem that I have with a lot of No More Heroes fan base is whenever I look things about the story and I'm thinking like, hey, wasn't this like fucking stupid? The only thing not the only thing, there are some people that try to like have reasonable responses, but they're few and far between. But the vast majority of the answers I see are about like thieves or what it means like metatextually, and I'm just not at all interested in any of that bullshit. Oh, Travis kills Henry by slashing him up or whatever, after an infinitely worse version of the same boss fight from No More Heroes 1. And then after the cutscene where he slashed up Henry appears in a window. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Because in the story, the answer is some old bullshit. And then in the meta, it's some old bullshit. So I'm just not, I don't care. It's all stupid. You can't justify the stupid, actually awful story happening in front of me by going, well, actually, in the meta, it means, no, shut up, I don't care. Why are there so many fucking cutscenes of Fu hanging out with his friends where they say a bunch of old bullshit that I don't care about? Why is the cutscene leading up to that one RPG boss fight that isn't an RPG boss fight, which I would have loved, by the way? It would have been fucking awesome if No More Heroes had an actual straight-up RPG boss fight in it, where they take Travis's actual mechanics and turn them into an RPG fight. But they say, but they do the stupid-ass cutscene where the joke is that he's taking really long to get here, isn't he? And it's like, I don't fucking care! The joke wore out like 30 seconds ago because he takes like a full minute to walk up to you, and the joke stops being funny at that point. Especially when the game points out how stupid and boring and long long it is, and the cutscene afterwards has no polish because it's two models that aren't moving, talking to each other about some bullshit that I don't care about, because it's more bullshit that I don't care about. The entire game is full of bullshit that I don't care about. And then the actual RPG fight starts, and you have to do the meta thing of attacking the big boxes, because they don't want to do an RPG fight, because gamers don't like that, even though I'm a gamer, and I like RPG fights. And then it just turns into an actual boss fight that's even worse, and that I don't care about even more. I say all this to say that No More Heroes gets on my nerves a lot. No More Heroes 3 gets on my nerves a lot when it comes to the story and the actual structure of the game, because they brought back the open world bullshit from the first game that I didn't like and was stupid. And guess what? I still don't like it because it's still stupid. And then something I just remembered that I mentioned in the middle of that rant was how the cutscenes have no polish, because No More Heroes 3 was made in like 2 years with the budget of a ham sandwich, because that game is ugly. Even on PS4, because that's what I played on. I didn't play it on Switch. I played 3 on PS4, and that game is ugly, and the cutscenes are ugly, and there's pop-in everywhere, and the game slows down at the mildest inconvenience. And oh my god, I'm remembering even more things from the rant I just gave, and this is what I mean when I say that it's hard to not get into No More Heroes 3, and that it's hard to bring myself back, because No More Heroes 3 has so many things that piss me off specifically, as well as just being bad game design, that it's hard to not want to get into it. Because that entire rant, okay, so the way these are made from my perspective is that I'm mostly just giving my thoughts as they come to me while I'm recording, but if I like stutter too much, or if I take too long in between like saying things, or if I have too many uhs or ums or likes or you knows or any of my various vocal quirks, I cut those out and then just rethink whatever I was already thinking. So I mostly record these raw, and every now and then there will be cuts in between the things that I say, because I either took a breath that was too long, or I just stopped a thought that was too long, anything like that. But for that entire rant, that was like an entire minute straight of me just going, because when these things come to me, they just fucking come to me. It happens on stream too, when I was talking about Persona 5, because that game also has a lot of things that piss me off in it. And it just goes, is the point. And so it's hard to not just go with No More Heroes 3. So to bring it down, to try and cut out all the bullshit that I want to talk about so goddamn much, the combat. The combat is, because I mentioned before, that No More Heroes 3 is the best No More Heroes game. Reluctantly, but it is. Because in terms of like gameplay front, it's the best of the 3. Because in terms of actual controls, it controls like an actual video game. There's like an actual dodge instead of whatever the hell No More Heroes 1 and 2 have. The attacks themselves aren't just hack and slash swings. They are like actual moves that you have to consider whenever you're attacking enemies. The power glove, or the death glove, whatever it's called, it gives you more to consider whenever you're getting into combat, and it gives you, more to think about. The grabs aren't quite as fun because there aren't as many of them, and stuns don't work quite the same way. But at the end of the day, I can appreciate more No More Heroes 3's system, where it's after a certain amount of time, you have to pay attention to when the stars come up, because you have to be ready to, initiate a grab at whatever point. Whereas in No More Heroes 1 and 2, you have to use the stun button. And why there's 2 stun buttons, I'll never know. But why we have to take up 2 face buttons with stun buttons that don't work the same way that they should all the time, because they don't work inconsistently, I still to this day am not 100% sure how the stun works. But again, No More Heroes 3 technically has a better stun system, even though the grabs themselves are pretty straightforward. It's just one button. Even the random powers you get from whatever are better, because the Henshin suit is fine as just being an AoE. The green Henshin is fine as just being a power up where you have different moves. The invincibility is back, so that's pretty straightforward for an action game. Infinite grab, that's nice. It just feels you get them more often than you do in No More Heroes 1 and 2, so it feels like they play into the game more. I'm pretty sure I have a clip that I might be playing on stream right now of me fighting Gold Joe with like infinite grabs or something, and I just fucking wrecked his shit, because I did not get hit once in that boss fight. Because when you get lucky in the Gold Joe's fight, he just never gets to attack ever. Because that's another thing. The bosses were some of them. It's highs and lows, because Gold Joe was actually a pretty good fight. Black Hole Joe, or whatever his name is, the Black Hole guy. He was also a pretty good fight. Not in the story, because in the story you have to do a bunch of bullshit after the fight, but the fight itself, like the actual real fight, was pretty good. But then there are ones like the RPG fight that I mentioned earlier that I ranted about. That fight kind of sucks. So it's highs and lows. The good boss fights are pretty good, but the bad boss fights are fucking awful. Sometimes they'll be right next to each other, like with the musical chairs boss fight. Musical chairs themselves were actually pretty interesting. Not very hard, because it's a very, very easy rhythm game, and then the running itself is whatever. And also, I'm pretty sure the game will handicap itself just to make sure you win. But yeah, the musical chairs themselves they're pretty fun, but then they're followed up by a boss fight that fucking sucks because it's just you attacking, and then every now and then you just have to stop playing the game so that you don't get insta killed. So that part sucks, and sometimes they'll be right next to each other. But for the most part, the boss fights were hit or miss. And again, so that's I'll leave it at that for No More Heroes 3. But trust me, No More Heroes 3 is the game that I will talk about the most when I get to my video about all 3 games. And if you want to know exactly what I don't like about most analysis of No More Heroes, particularly No More Heroes 3 and Travis Strikes Again, there's a 4-hour video about No More Heroes 3 that is exactly what I hate about analysis of these games. And so if you wanna pre-game my video whenever that eventually gets made in, again, like 3 years, I try not to be so pessimistic about these things, but it takes me so long to make videos that it might generally be 3 years from now. But there's a 4-hour No More Heroes video that I don't remember the title of because it was some stupid bullshit. But that entire video is 110% bad content to me because I hate every single bit of analysis in that video. Even in bad videos, there are typically like 1 or 2 things that someone says that I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. But not for that No More Heroes video. It is 4 hours of straight shit on my plate, and I hate it. So, yeah. And in terms of our weekly gaming topic for this episode of the Backlog Bunker, it's actually kind of related to the No More Heroes 3 analysis. Well, not that one specifically, but about how I hate people's analysis of No More Heroes. Because even with No More Heroes 2, where people aren't talking about the themes, which they definitely are, because 2 has a lot of stupid cutscenes where you're talking to Sylvia about a glass pane or whatever, and it just takes it too much time. Point being, I think gamers are stupid when it comes to analyzing most video games, but this all applies to a lot of things in the wider gaming sphere. So I need to ask the question, are gamers stupid? And the answer, the simple answer is yeah, pretty much. But like, there's more to think about, because the reason that I come up with this topic in the first place was because of the yellow paint discussion, which, if you aren't aware, is the discussion about how in a lot of modern video games where graphics are getting better and better and better, there are a lot of games where they will put like some stark yellow coloring on a certain object to let the player know that they can interact with it. And a lot of people are very half and half on this. Half of the gaming community at large considers it to be bad game design because they have to mark to the players with some stupid, weird in-universe thing that doesn't make any sense, being like, hey, player, you can interact with this thing. While people on the other side are like, well, no, people genuinely need these things because as high fidelity as games are getting, it is actually getting harder to tell what you can and can't interact with in the environment. And so yeah, the yellow paint is necessary. It's necessary evil. And from my perspective, both people are wrong. Because when we say things like, oh, yellow paint is dumbing down the games for gamers, we're not saying that, or the real problem isn't that the games are being dumbed down. The problem is that the games are being too high fidelity that we need to dumb them down in the first place. Because here's the thing, right? Like, Dragon Quest XI is a very high fidelity, or I don't know about very high fidelity, but it's a good looking game. It's certainly better looking than like a PS2 or GameCube Resident Evil 4. But Dragon Quest XI does not need to signpost its collectibles to me with bright yellow paint, because within the game, they're just shiny collectibles on the ground or in treasure chests that I can fucking see with my eyeballs. And so the problem is really just that we're making games where things look so realistic that we even need to go, hey, there are things you can interact with and things that you can't. And I'm not saying that we need to do the old-timey cartoon thing where the things that we can interact with are drawn differently than everything else, but the yellow paint is only a band-aid solution. All it does is say, hey, we made these things look too good so we couldn't tell you whether or not you need to hit them or not. And so that itself is a stupid problem. And then there's things like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where there's like climbable walls that have yellow paint on them. But again, the problem there isn't that we're signposting the yellow paint, or we're signposting the climbable wall with the yellow paint. The problem is, why is there a climbable wall there? Isn't Final Fantasy VII Rebirth an RPG? An action RPG, but still an RPG? What the hell do we need climbable walls for? Especially to the point where I wouldn't know that I need to climb them. Because I played a little bit of the FF7 remake demo, and like there didn't need to be yellow paint on like ladders, because if a ladder was in front of me, I would just climb the ladder. Or there would be a UI element telling me you can press A to climb this ladder, or whatever button it was. And the problem is that in the game like Rebirth, why do we need yellow paint on a wall to be able to tell us we need to climb it? Because the answer should either be the climbable wall should either just be a part of the game to the point where there's nowhere else you're supposed to go but the climbable wall, or the climbable wall itself should just have a UI element telling you to climb the wall. Why would I need yellow paint to immerse me in the world, to be like, hey, the yellow paint signifies to players that there needs to be a climbable wall here, when in reality, I should not be climbing a fucking wall. I'm playing in the open world of my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth action RPG. I don't want to climb walls, I want to fight guys. So to bring this back around to this week's topic, when I ask are gamers stupid, I don't mean are gamers stupid into the yellow paint. What I mean is are gamers stupid because they seem to never have their priorities straight. Like, in terms of something like DLC, people get mad at DLC being in games because it's like, well, I already bought the game, why am I paying more for it? But in reality, you know, it's fine. If there's more content in the game that they spent money to make, then you should have to spend money to play the content. What gamers should be way more focused on is pre-order bonuses, because for something like Sonic X Shadow Generations, there are some pretty cool pre-order bonuses in that game that I will not be getting, because I do not want to guarantee Sega my dollar for a game that I haven't gotten yet. And you could argue that applies to every game, that, you know, you buy a game before you've played it, obviously, but that's not really the case. For a game that has come out, you have the option to play it before you buy it. It's gonna be a workaround. You'll have to play it from a friend, or get it on Steam where you can refund it, or pirate it in some cases, because for some reason we've lost the art of giving games demos. But still, there are ways to play games before you have to spend your money on them. And then even in a worst case scenario, you can even just look up things about the game, because sometimes games come out broken and shitty and they don't work. And so even just being able to know that the game does not work at launch is helpful for whether or not you want to spend your money on the game. And there's this really strange thing that Sega would be pushing these pre-order bonuses so much when Sega is notoriously ass at putting out these games. I'm looking at you, Monkey Ball and Sonic the Hedgehog. And yet, mysteriously, I don't see a lot of people talking about these pre-order bonuses being so scummy, because a pre-order bonus is how they guarantee your dollar. If you buy a game from GameStop or whatever, then all that money, then the money that Sega gets, they already got. The money Sega gets came from GameStop buying those copies of Sonic X Shadow to be able to give to people. So when you pre-order that, they already have your money because you already got the game from GameStop. If you sell the game back, that's not money coming out of Sega's pocket. They guaranteed your dollar from you buying the game day one. Not even day one. It was pre-day one, because you put so much trust in them that you're saying, I don't even know what you're putting in my hands yet, but I know it'll be good. When you don't know it'll be good, because games are notoriously coming out not good nowadays. Imagine if you pre-ordered Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Imagine how much of an asshole you feel like now. How much of a fucking fool you feel like to have that game in your hands because you pre-ordered it. Now, granted, if it's on Steam or something, it's probably not as bad, because I think on digital releases, they do have to, like, spend money to pay for refunds, but unless that's not the case, in which case it's still bad. But again, if you pre-ordered Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I bet you feel like a fucking idiot now, because you guaranteed $1 on a game that came out broken and shitty and stupid. Sure, a lot of these things eventually get fixed, but you're still the one holding the bag. You paid for that fix with your money that you didn't guarantee, because you might have paid for that game and then might have died. They might have never updated it. So you're putting so much trust in these institutions that will not trust you. And it's wild to me. So when I ask if gamers are stupid, that's what I mean by that. Are gamers stupid because they keep making stupid decisions? Especially with the Sonic fanbase, because I have not seen a single dissenting opinion on any of the pre-order bonuses for Sonic X Shadow. Because the Sonic fanbase is so whipped that they see a fucking Terios skin, and they're like, oh my god, guys, it's Terios! And I aren't thinking about the fact they're pre-ordering a game that hasn't come out yet, and that might be broken and shitty and stupid, but it's the fucking Sonic game, and that happens to these things sometimes. I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect at release, but Sonic Frontiers wasn't finished! So all I ask is that Sonic fans have a little bit more self-respect and don't just shovel shit down their throats every single chance they get, especially when they're buying collector's editions from Limited Run Games, the worst fucking company to sell games on the entire planet Earth, because they don't give you games like a year later. Okay, assuming they even give you games at all, because some people just haven't gotten their shit from Limited Run Games ever. But then sometimes, even if they do get their things, it'll be like 2-3 years later, because for some godforsaken reason, they just can't ship these games out. And there's the fact that they're Limited Run in the first place. Why are they limited? You have an infinite amount of stock, because you'll sell as many as you need to, as many people buy them, but you'll limit them in terms of the time people can buy them, because they wouldn't want to have a fear of missing out, would they? It's like the most dictionary definition of FOMO you can get on the fucking face of the earth. It's so stupid. Why are people still buying these limited run games? I know that there are some people who just aren't in the know, but even if you are in the know, it's a collector's edition that costs like $300 that you're not gonna get for another year. What are you waiting for? If you learn anything from these backlog bunkers, be it that I hate Sonic fans or that I hate No More Heroes fans, because these two rants in this episode are the most passionate I've gotten throughout any of these recordings by a very wide margin. I know I yelled a few times for like Metal Gear Solid, I think, but those are like the only rants that I've gone on, because like there was definitely times where I pause during those rants where I think about cutting them out, but I can't cut them out because I need to go. I need to go, and whenever I go, that's what I want from these episodes. I want more of that whenever I go on video games. So again, break next week, and then the week after we'll be back with like real content, because that will be me talking about whatever I played in that week, and it probably won't be as, you know, inflamed because I'm not playing games that I hate quite as much, but I am playing the Yakuza games, so don't think you'll be missing out that much. So more rants to come, more content to come. I hope people are liking the series, because I don't want to do these rants for nothing. Granted, I find them fun and cathartic. I want to go off on Sonic fans all the fucking time, so you'll hear no complaints from me about doing these videos. But yeah, just tell me what you want to talk about, because I have a few topics lined up for like things to talk about for the end of video discussion, but after this one, they're getting few and far between, because I use most of them on these episodes, which I maybe shouldn't have done, but some of them were very timely, so I had to get them out of the way as soon as I could. So like the yellow paint discussion is already far behind us, so that's how long this has been in my thought process. But point being, more content. I hope you liked it. If you want things that you want to see from these videos, then let me know in the comments, please. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.